to introducing Ron. You mostly know Ron, but what I've been trying to do, because we have visitors, is do a real bona fide, introduction, so our visitors will know who our speakers are and our presenters, and it's always interesting. And so I'll go with this. Ron Breznay has been collecting stamps on and off since he was 10 years old. He currently lives in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. He has a worldwide collection, but specializes in US, Confederate States, and Canada. He has several topical collections, including horror, Hitchcock, and summer on stamps. He has various cover collections, including covers from US Navy ships named after local places, local postal history, and local philatelic history. He's a member of various philatelic societies and the founder, president, newsletter editor of the Wyoming Valley Stamp Club, which won an award last year, the newsletter. And Ron has been retired from his job as a litigation paralegal a little over a year ago. Ron, does that mean we can come to you for legal advice?
No, not allowed to give it.
Not yet, huh? Not when you're retired. Well, good. Well, we welcome you if everybody put on their mute. And Ron, you can just share your screen with us.
Okay.
Ron, do you want questions before, during, or after, or doesn't it matter?
Oh, it doesn't matter.
Okay, so if you have a question, just kind of raise your hand and, okay, very good.
Okay, this presentation is about covers from U.S. Navy ships named after places in my area. I was born in Wilkes-Barre, which is in northeastern Pennsylvania, about 20 miles south of Scranton. You're right there. And Lancaster is down here, so it's not too far. I lived in one suburb or another of Wilkes-Barre all my life, except for 4 years in the Army and 6 years in Los Angeles. I became interested in these naval covers after I did an eBay search for Wilkes-Barre items from my hometown collection and came across a Uss Wilkesbury cover. I then started adding Uss Pennsylvania covers and became inspired to look into just how many ships are named after local places and tried to find covers for them. So I started my naval cover collection a little over 3 years ago with this first USS Wilkes-Barre cover. That gave me a focus for my collection rather than collecting at random, or worse, trying to collect everything. There were two ships named the USS Wilkesbury, which were both light cruisers. CL-90 was renamed the USS Wilkesbury when the keel was laid in 1941, but before launch, she was renamed in honor of the USS Astoria, CA-34, which was sunk in 1942. The USS Wilkesbury that actually sailed was light cruiser number 103. The keel was laid on December 14th, 1942 at the New York Shipbuilding Corporation shipyard in Camden, New Jersey. And she was launched on December 24th, 1943. The champagne bottle was smashed on the hull by Grace Shoemaker Minor, wife of Dr. Charles H. Minor of Wilkes-Barre. And the ship was commissioned at the Philadelphia Navy Yard on July 1st, 1944, and went on to fight in the Pacific. The first day of Postal Service on the ship was January 6, 1946, as shown on this cover, which is not mine. Now, after the war, she participated in the occupation of Japan and returned to the U.S. in January 1946. The ship was in New Orleans on October 27th, 1946, to celebrate Navy Day, which honors the birth of the U.S. Navy and takes place in various port cities on October 27th. The Wilkes-Barre was decommissioned in 1947, remained in mothballs, and was struck from the Naval Register in 1971. She was sunk during explosives tests in 1972. And this cover marks the 50th anniversary of her commissioning. In 1971, a memorial to the USS Wilkesbury was installed on the courthouse lawn in Wilkes-Barre. The memorial consists of the ship's anchors and bell. There are other artifacts from the ship in the Luzerne County Historical Society Museum, including a flag from the ship, a telegraph machine, an operations manual, and a Japanese machine gun that was captured by the crew. So I then started looking for covers named for ships after Pennsylvania, and I found 5 ships named after the state, 2 more are variations of the state's name, and 3 with the state's nickname, which is the Keystone State. The first ship named the USS Pennsylvania was a ship of the line launched in 1837. There are no covers from this ship as onboard post offices were not authorized until 1908. And this ship was destroyed during the Civil War to prevent her from falling into Confederate hands. The next USS Pennsylvania was a screw steamer that was laid down as Keewaydin in 1863, but was never launched. She was renamed Pennsylvania while she lay in the ways before being broken up in 1884. The first philatelically significant USS Pennsylvania was an armored cruiser, ACR-4, the lead ship of the Pennsylvania class cruisers. This was launched in 1903, and the launch was sponsored by Coral Quay, daughter of U.S. Senator Matthew S. Quay of Pennsylvania. And this is a New Year's postcard, postmarked on date in the 1910s, but where am I? But some of the numbers on the postmark are unclear. Now, this ship was important because it ushered in the era of naval aviation and aircraft carriers. On January 18, 1911, a biplane flown by Eugene Ely from Tan Foreign Airfield in San Bruno, California, landed on a platform constructed on the afterdeck of the USS Pennsylvania. This was the first successful aircraft landing on a ship. This photo shows a plane approaching the flight deck. This one shows a successful landing. And the event was commemorated on this cover in 2018. In 1912, the ship was renamed the USS Pittsburgh to free up the Pennsylvania name for a battleship. This is a cover from the ship after she was renamed. Now, the USS Pennsylvania was depicted on 3 stamps which show the aircraft landing. The stamp from the Marshall Islands shows the plane approaching, as does the stamp from Paraguay. And the stamp from Antigua and Barbuda shows the plane lined up for landing. Now, the battleship named the USS Pennsylvania BB-38 was the lead ship of the Pennsylvania class of battleships. She was launched in March 1915, but was not sent to Europe during World War I because the fuel she used, which was oil rather than coal, was not readily available in Europe. Instead, she took part in training exercises off the east coast of the U.S. Now, the ship was depicted on a stamp from the Gambia. This postcard was sent from the Pennsylvania on October 5th, 1919. Looks like the sender wrote still living. And apparently, at the time, the ship was in Brest, France. The USS Pennsylvania participated in Navy Day in 1932. And in 1933, there was a change of command, as noted in the postmark. And it shows the guns on the front of the ship. Now, the USS Macon, ZRS-5, was a rigid airship launched in 1933. Now, the Macon was sighted by the USS Pennsylvania off the coast of California in January 1935. And on February 12th, the Macon ran into a storm off Point Sur, California, and crashed into the sea. The Pennsylvania sailed to the rescue and participated in rescue operations. Only two crew members of the Macon were lost thanks to the warm water and availability of life jackets and inflatable rafts. Those who did not survive were one man who jumped ship while still too high above the ocean to survive the fall, and another drowned while swimming back into the wreckage to receive personal belongings. Now, Fleet Week is a U.S. Navy, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard tradition in which active military ships recently deployed in overseas operations dock in a variety of major U.S. cities for 1 week. Once the ships dock, the crews can enter the city and visit its tourist attractions, and at certain hours, the public can take guided tours of the ship. USS Pennsylvania participated in Fleet Week in 1938. The ship was in dry dock at Pearl Harbor during the Japanese attack, as remembered on this anniversary cover. The ship took to their battle stations and engaged the enemy with anti-aircraft fire. The ship was hit by strafing and by bombs, and 15 men were killed. The ship was not badly damaged, was able to sail to San Francisco for repairs, thence returned to action in the Pacific. The Pennsylvania was assigned to the target fleet for the Operation Crossroads nuclear tests at Bikini Atoll in 1946. The ship left Puget Sound on February 24th, and this cover is from her final voyage. The ship arrived at Bikini Atoll on May 31st, and she survived 2 tests, but was badly contaminated in the second test. The ship was studied for about a year and a half and then scuttled off Bikini in 1948. 2 of the 14-inch guns from the Pennsylvania that were on the ship during the Pearl Harbor attack were removed during a 1945 overhaul, and these guns are now on display at the Pennsylvania Military Museum in Boalsburg, which is near State College. And this is the plaque on the gun display. 1 bell from the ship is at the Pennsylvania Military Museum, and the picture is a little fuzzy because for some reason my flash didn't go off. And another bell from the ship is in front of the ROTC headquarters at Penn State University and State College. The latest of the ships named after Pennsylvania is an Ohio-class ballistic missile nuclear submarine, SSBN 735. The Ohio-class subs are the largest U.S. submarines ever built. I have several covers tracing the history of the sub. The boat was christened on April 23rd, 1988 at Groton, Connecticut, in a ceremony sponsored by Mrs. Henry Lawrence Garrett III. Garrett was Secretary of the Navy under President George H.W. Bush. And after launch, the ship underwent sea trials, was delivered to the Navy on August 22nd, 1989, and was commissioned on September 9th, 1989, with Captain Richard M. Kemp commanding the Blue Crew and Captain Lee Edwards commanding the Gold Crew. Each missile firing nuclear submarine has 2 full crews named Blue and Gold. While 1 crew takes the sub out to sea, the other remains at home port. The boat underwent its first change of command on April 18th, 1991, with Captain J. Hamburg taking over command of the Blue Crew. The sub is currently in service, but the stamp on this cover doesn't match, as the USS Pennsylvania is an Ohio-class sub, not a Los Angeles class. The boat celebrated the 15th anniversary of its commissioning in September 2004, and the 30th on September 2019. I haven't found any covers postmarked above the submarine, but this is an image of a postmark I found online. Now, I found 2 ships with variations on the Pennsylvania name. The SS Pennsylvanian was a cargo ship built in 1913 for the American Hawaiian Steamship Company. During World War I, she was requisitioned by the U.S. Navy and commissioned as USS Pennsylvanian ID 3511 in September 1918, and renamed 2 months later to USS Scranton, which is a city near here. After her naval service, her original name of Pennsylvania was restored. I haven't found any covers from this ship. And then speaking of the USS Scranton, this is a later ship with the same name, a submarine with the hull number SSN 756. This cover commemorates her 15th anniversary of commissioning on January 26, 2006. This is a Los Angeles class attack submarine that is still in service. The USS Pennsylvania Railroad number 9, SP 679, was built for the Pennsylvania Railroad and commissioned as the U.S. Navy armed tug and minesweeper from 1917 to 1919. After that, it was returned to the railroad. I haven't found any covers from this ship. There are also 3 ships named after Pennsylvania's nickname. The first, USS Keystone State, was a wooden side-wheel steamer used by the U.S. Navy during the Civil War. The second was the former sloop of war St. Louis, which was renamed Keystone State on November 30th, 1904. Both of these ships were in service before onboard post offices were authorized. Another ship, the SS Keystone State, TACS-1, is a tactical auxiliary crane ship launched in 1965 and currently in service. Now for a little geography lesson. Wilkes-Barre is located in the Wyoming Valley, which is in a range of the Appalachian Mountains that also includes the Poconos. The Susquehanna River flows through the valley. The area is part of Luzerne County, and I found ships named after all of these places. Now the name Wyoming comes from a people known as the Wyoming, who were the earliest settlers in this region. Artifacts on display at the Luzerne County Historical Society Museum show that the Wyoming had lived in this area from 8,000 to 1,000 BC. And the state of Wyoming was named after the Wyoming Valley. I found 4 ships named the USS Wyoming. The first was named after the valley, while the other 3 were named after the state. However, since the state was named after the valley, I still consider that a local connection. First USS Wyoming was a steam sloop launched in 1859. This was a ship that was named after the valley. She operated off the California coast during the Civil War on the Union side. She also fought off the coast of Japan, including in the Battle of the Straits of Shimonoseki in 1863, winning the first ever U.S. naval victory over Japan. Now, in 1868, the ship sailed for the Atlantic and saw service at the North Atlantic Station, European Station, and at the Naval Academy. There are no ship postmarks on this vessel, as post offices were not authorized yet. Now, this is a letter sent from the Wyoming in 1879 while she was at the European Station. This letter was sent from Cadiz, Spain to Nice, France. I do not have this cover, but I found it on eBay with an opening bid of $175. I found 3 more similar letters from the same seller, and they all had 3-figure opening bids. Now, this ship was decommissioned in October 1882 and spent the next decade as a practice ship for midshipmen from the U.S. Naval Academy. The next USS Wyoming was a small warship known as a Monitor, BM-10, commissioned in December 1902. She was renamed Cheyenne in January 1909 to clear the name Wyoming for the projected battleship number 32. I haven't found any covers from this ship, and I don't know if it even had an onboard post office. The battleship USS Wyoming BB-32 was a dreadnought battleship commissioned in September 1912, which saw service in the Atlantic and the Pacific. Now, this cover was mailed from Guantanamo Bay, Cuba on November 7, 1925, from Lieutenant Lindblad and sent to his son, Theodore Lindblad. Inside is a 6-page letter on United States Ship Wyoming letterhead. The LT noted that it is field day, that is, everything from parrots to bar soap is being scrubbed. The Wyoming was demilitarized in 1931 and converted to a training ship. During the demilitarization process, the ship's anti-torpedo bulges, side armor, and half of the main battery guns were removed. As a training ship, her designation was AG-17. This is a cover from Navy Day in 1932, and that's a hand stamp cancel. And this one for 1935 has a machine cancel. Now, one of the ship's missions as a training vessel was the annual summer cruise, which was a trip to Europe that gave midshipmen from the Naval Academy at Annapolis training and experience in commanding the crew of a Navy ship. I have a dozen covers tracing the USS Wyoming's 1935 summer cruise, which I will go through quickly. She left Annapolis, now I'm saying goodbye. Reached Edinburgh on June 22nd. The crew celebrated the 4th of July in the North Sea before reaching Oslo on July 6th, and then went on to Copenhagen on July 12th. It took a couple of weeks to get down to Gibraltar. The ship then went to Funchal on Madeira Islands, reaching that port on August 1st. And then on the way back home to Annapolis, she stopped at Hampton Roads, Virginia, and Lynnhaven Roads, Virginia. The ship was back in Annapolis on August 27th, a voyage of nearly 12 weeks. The Wyoming continued operating as a training ship in the Atlantic during World War II and was decommissioned in August 1947 and was scrapped at the end of that year. The 4th USS Wyoming, SSBN 742, is an Ohio-class nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarine. USS Wyoming was commissioned in July 1996 and is still in active service. The sub is assigned to the Atlantic Fleet and is home ported at Kings Bay, Georgia. The sub was honored on a stamp issued by the Marshall Islands in 2000. The USS Appalachian, AGC-1, an amphibious force command ship, was named after the mountains that form the Wyoming Valley. The ship was launched on January 29th, 1943. This cover is from 1944. It had to pass through a naval censor. She joined the USS Pennsylvania at Bikini Atoll in 1946, but as a support ship, not a target ship. This cover was mailed on July 1st, 1946, possibly when the ship was sailing for Bikini Atoll. The ship was decommissioned in 1947 and sold for scrap in 1960. We don't have any covers from this ship with a USS Appalachian postmark. Now, the USS Pocono AGC/LCC-16 was an Adirondack class amphibious force command ship. She was commissioned on December 19, 1945, and operated off the Atlantic coast. Early in 1948, she was a flagship of Admiral W.H.P. Blandy, commander of the Atlantic Fleet. The ship was decommissioned at Norfolk in June 1949, recommissioned in 1951, and scrapped at the end of 1981. Now, 4 ships were named after the Susquehanna, the river that flows through Wyoming Valley and also flows past Lancaster. The ship was a side-wheel steamer Well, this first one was a sidewheel steamer launched in 1850 that fought in the Civil War. She was assigned to the Atlantic Blockading Squadron in 1861 at Hampton Roads, Virginia. And this cover commemorates the ship. The second USS Susquehanna, ID 3016, also known as TT 3016, was a German passenger steamship that was seized at Baltimore upon the outbreak of World War I, used as a troop transport. Covers from this ship are rare, as fewer than 25 are known, and I don't have one of them. The third Susquehanna was a gasoline tanker, AOG-5, that was launched in 1942 and served in the Pacific during World War II. The fourth was the USNS Susquehanna TAO-185, which was a Falcon-class transport tanker. She was launched in 1972 as a civilian ship, Falcon Countess, and later leased by the U.S. Navy and renamed. The ship had no postal facilities. This cover was mailed in 1977. She was taken out of service in 1983 and returned to her owners in 1984. Now, launched in 1944, USS Luzerne County, LST 902, was a landing ship that served in World War II, the Korean War, and the Vietnam War. This photo shows her at Vung Tau, Vietnam, where coincidentally, a member of the Wyoming Valley Stamp Club was stationed. The ship earned 2 battle stars for the Korean War, 1 award of the Meritorious Unit Commendation, and 12 battle stars for Vietnam service. She was decommissioned in 1970. The Belfinder ship is at Marine Corps Logistics Base in Barstow, California. Now, there were a number of Victory ships named after American cities. One of these is the SS Pittston Victory. The Pittston is at the northern end of Wyoming Valley. There are also Victory ships named after Plymouth, Kingston, and Luzerne, which are the names of local towns in the valley, though they might not all be the local ones. The Plymouth was probably named after the Massachusetts city, and there are several Kingstons in the U.S. The Victory ship was a class of cargo ship produced in large numbers during World War II. They were a more modern design compared to the earlier Liberty ships. Another category for my collection would be ships named after local personalities, but I couldn't find any local ships named after them. For example, if you lived in Grand Rapids, Michigan, you can get covers from the USS Gerald R. Ford. Okay. Now this photo shows many of the places mentioned in this presentation. This is a shot of the Wyoming Valley, which is in Pennsylvania, also known as the Keystone State. You see the Susquehanna River and a portion of the Appalachians. And on the right is the city of Wilkes-Barre. And over here is the courthouse for Luzerne County. Now, while doing research, I came across some insignia for Navy postal clerks. This is insignia for a mail clerk, was a petty officer first class, which is a E6 rank. And by the way, I was a mail clerk for about 2 years when I was in the Army. Talk about an assignment that's right up my alley. Here I am carrying the day's mail from the 2nd Armored Division mail truck. Now, it would be easy for you to start your own USS local collection. Besides having covers from ships named after Pennsylvania, the Susquehanna River, and the Appalachians, you can Google U.S. place names with USS before the name to find ships, and then search eBay and other sources for covers. For instance, this is one of the ships named USS Lancaster, which is a screw sloop that was launched in 1858. And this is a cover from the ship. Marking on the left is not a postmark, as post offices were not authorized on ships at the time. This postcard shows the Lancaster as a receiving ship at the Philadelphia Navy Yard. She is on the left, and USS Wyoming is on the right. The postcard was postmarked May 18th, May 18th, 1909, but I don't have an image of the address side. If you're interested in a collection like this, you can join the Universal Ship Cancellation Society, which is a group that collects naval covers. You have a monthly journal, a ton of information on their website, the sales and auctions of naval covers. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Ron. As you know, I know when we were discussing earlier, that picture of Wilkes-Barre sure looks like Harrisburg, right on Front Street. And what you pointed out as the courthouse would be the Mason. There's a big Mason thing looking north in Harrisburg, the Italian Garden. So it's a beautiful river. Is it? Questions, people? Do we have any Navy vets? Anybody? Okay, Chuck. Good. Dave, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I didn't know that they didn't have their first post office authorization until 1908. And so if you got one, it had to be something special like that one from the Lancaster ship in 1871 that he showed. There's a very nice cover.
If I may, I'd like to make a comment as a former cover dealer and a naval cover collector. One cannot put together a collection like Ron has overnight by going to one or two shows. Some of those pieces that he showed are, in my way of thinking, very, very scarce. And I'd like to commend him on his ability to put together that collection.
Yeah. Oh, it took me about 3 years so far.
That was quick.
Yeah, a few of the covers are not my collection.
Yeah.
I just found images online to illustrate, one ship or two.
I think you enhanced the cover collection too with the photos. And there again, with exhibits at shows now, I think they're getting a little more open-minded to things such as photos supplementing the covers.
Yeah, well, that's part of it. What makes it interesting is researching the ships and the history behind them.
Yeah.
Yeah, the exhibits are really opening them up. There's a very good book that just came out on forming thematic and topical exhibits. And we're looking forward to the author as a speaker coming up next year. And he has a chapter in there for exhibiting kind of 3D objects in your stamp exhibit. And things like maps, I think, and postcards can only, to me, enhance, a philatelic exhibit. And I think the exhibiting committee is getting used to that now. And I think, Ron, you got a very good example of that. The extra material, the ephemera, the postcards, the photographs, plus knowing what you're doing. That's a lot of ships to remember.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things that's difficult in naval research or ship research, is that like the kings. How many King Henrys were there? In England you can count them, but there are a lot of others in different countries. And we just read about a King Henry, then you got to know what country and what year. And it's the same thing for the ships. Which USS Pennsylvania, which Wyoming Valley. But I think it's a very nice niche, very creative area, and something that's personal. And that's how a lot of us get started. We look up our hobbies, our areas of interest. Like Al, I know with the naval covers, you're a naval veteran. My interests, which I've talked about, I have collections and accumulations. And, Joe Sullivan's with us tonight, big emphasis in printing and those kinds of technologies. And he does that journal. So yeah, it's a very nice way to collect. Other comments for Ron? Questions? Okay, well, thank you, Ron. We appreciate it. And we'll welcome you back. Yep. Mm-hmm. I think now we'll take a few minutes. Yeah. Good.
Yeah, very good.
The silent cheer.